Marijuana, schizophrenia, and spirituality. Welcome to the Morning Mist. My name is Paul, and today we're going to get high. Now, before we take off, let's do a quick recap of our previous two videos, which were a laying of the foundation for what we're going to talk about right now. In A Leaning Tree, we talked about how the symptoms of schizophrenia are as heavy weights that negatively affects the growth or development of the individual, and as a result, we are conditioned, even if it's in our hearts only, our minds, we are conditioned to take on and display a distorted form. So this means we no longer are able to express ourselves truly as we truly are or want to be. But instead we express ourselves as part of the illness, as if it's us, my schizophrenia, my hallucinations, my delusions, right? These are not how we want to truly be, but this is how we express ourselves, and these are the weight that distorts us and truly empowers the illness, and we no longer grow freely and to really determine the destiny that we ourselves would choose, but we're now at the mercy of this heavy weight resting against us, and that we now accept as part of us. In Schizophrenia and the 12 doors, we identified the five doors to the body, the five to the mind, and the two to the heart. We talked about how schizophrenia uses these doors to infiltrate, manipulate, and control the mind, and how we are further affected as we venture deep beyond these doors, where the symptoms grow greater and greater in strength. The doorways are opened and are kept opened by the attention despite the intention of the mind. This brings us to marijuana, where we are today. What exactly is marijuana? See, I learned as a teen that marijuana is a gateway. I know what you're thinking. Paul, hold it. We know marijuana is a gateway drug. But you know what? Hold on. I'm not talking about that. And even that's debatable. Some people say it's alcohol or a cigarette, whatever. But for this video, this topic, we don't care. When I say it's a gateway, I mean it's a gateway into a higher vibrational frequency. That's a word I picked up from YouTubers. I like it. It's nice. It's a fancy way of saying it brings you to another dimension, another dimensional space. Even that sounds nice. Now, I don't know where you're all coming from, your backgrounds and all, but before you think I am totally crazy, let me prove this to you that I'm not. I'm not there. I'm not there. But I can prove this to you, right? Because what I'm talking about is energy, right? Because I know this dimensional stuff, and people get a little bit weirded out because they don't really understand what that is, or we just coming from different schools. So before we go further into this other stuff, let's take a look at this article I found where it highlights marijuana as an entheogen that's been used for thousands of years into the past, I guess, where it started. But it's really interesting. It's a far cry from where we are today, using it as a recreational drug. There's a deeper history to it, deeper traditions, and it's been very important, very people's spiritual lives. So let's take a look at this. Here we are, Journal of Cannabis Research. Cannabis as entheogen, survey and interview data on the spiritual use of cannabis by a Peter Grahl Johnstad. Alrighty, so let's read this background here. While cannabis has a long history of spiritual use, its normalization in Western societies during the last decades has led to more recreational use. The study aimed to explore the characteristics of spiritual cannabis use as compared to recreational use and the use of psychedelics such as LSD and psilocybin, which I won't be looking at those so much right here. Well, it's going to be a comprehensive look, I guess, but I won't delve into those too much. But let's see, look at the methods. The studies employed a mixed method research design that involved both qualitative interviews and a quantitative survey. I'll move on from that, but that's how they're looking at this. But let's go to the results. Respondents differentiated clearly between the use of psychedelics and cannabis. Their use of psychedelic drugs they chose for the survey was restricted to a median of 1 to 10 use occasions per year, and 69% of the participants endorsed having a spiritual motivation for use. Okay. Cannabis, on the other hand, was used a median of 51 to 100 times per year. That's a big difference. And 25% of the participants endorsed having a spiritual motivation for use. So significantly different percentage of people who use them for spiritual motivation. So this minority of spiritual cannabis users differs significantly from non-spiritual users in how they approached cannabis use and in the type of experiences their use gave rise to. So isn't that something? How you approach it, the different how they approach the use, those who spiritual versus non-spiritual, and based on their approach, which is more intention, it actually their experiences differ, right? So it says this minority of spiritual cannabis users differ significantly from non-spiritual users in how they approach cannabis use and in the type of experience their use gave rise to. Right? Intention matters. In multivariate logistic regression models, spiritual motivation was a significant predictor of experiences of insight. Isn't that something? Spiritual motivation was a significant predictor of experiences of insight, connectedness, joy, love, and unity with transcendent forces, as opposed to just using it with just whatever, just to get high for the sake of getting high. It's riskier, right? So the conclusions, the study found evidence of a group of spiritual cannabis users who tended to regard cannabis as an entheogen. These spiritual cannabis users had a different mode of engagement with cannabis than recreational users and reported cannabis experiences that in some aspects resembled experiences with psychedelics, right? Marijuana can give you experiences similar to psychedelics, right? And I don't think it's so much, listen, it does differ, but I don't think non-spiritual users don't have those experiences. I think they just aren't aware of what's happening. I think that's what it is. And so because they aren't aware, they don't lean into that as much. You know, they just kind of carry on, and sometimes the experience might pop up in front of them and they have this moment they call tripping out. But then it's just a Beavis and Butthead moment and they move on, right? So recent research has not given much attention to spiritual aspects of cannabis use, but a study indicates that spirituality motivated use remains prevalent and deserves further study. 100%. That should be the foundation of studying this thing, right? It's so important, and I don't know, the Western science just disregards things coming from the East so much, and I think they do so with arrogance, and it's they don't get as much insight as they can because they probably looking at it as like, what these guys know. What do these guys know about it anyways? We're the scientists, we've got the big instruments, and we have all the knowledge and the experience and all that. But no, these guys got more experience with usage and how it can affect you in a deeper way than the Western scientists may have, right? They're just looking at the physical, man, the brain and all this, and the body, and that's only a part of it. The greater part of it is actually what's going on in the spirit, man. So let's check the background. This is really interesting. I'm not going to read this whole article, obviously. It's a lot. And I just want to look, I think, this last part here. maybe a little bit more. But cannabis has a long history of use in spiritual context. Archaeological evidence points to ritual cannabis use in China 2,500 years ago, right? And in Judahite worship in Israel dating back to the 8th century BC. In India, spiritual cannabis use probably goes back to prehistoric times and has been associated with the worship of Shiva. One of Shiva's epitaphs is Lord of Bang, not Bong, Bang, which refers to an edible preparation of cannabis, although devotees today more commonly smoke their ganja, cannabis, in a chillum. Pasta chillum. This traditional spread perhaps most notably to Jamaica. That's right, we know all about the chillum, Jamaicans, where Rastafarians smoke ganja, sometimes in a chillum, but more often as a spliff. Definitely. And may consider the act a sacrament. During the 1960s, furthermore, cannabis use spread among Western counterculture movements and often had spiritual overtones, according to Fuller. The act of smoking cannabis during these years was something like a rite of initiation into the religious underground, whereby one joined a community that valued nonconformity, peacefulness, and quiet introspection. One notable spokesperson for the age, the philosopher Alan Watts, I see his stuff all over my YouTube page sometimes. I have listened to some of the stuff actually. Endorsed cannabis as a psychedelic that, in his experience, was best suited for moving into a state of cosmic consciousness. Although he found that once the gate was opened, see, it's a gateway, man. It's a gateway. Was opened, he was gradually able to move into the state without using drugs. And I've never listened to his talks on marijuana, but that's exactly what I found it to be, and what I've even listened to other people mention it as. Actually, no, somebody else. It was one other person. But I'm sure anyone who uses it for spirituality understands that. That's exactly what it is. So as the cannabis use became normalized in Western societies during the 1970s and 1980s, however, it seems to have lost much of its spiritual connotations and became, in Fuller's words, just one more intoxicant alongside others. That normalization and despiritualization walked hand in hand here should probably not surprise us, at least if we follow Taves. In identifying specialness in essential basis on which people deem certain things as belonging to the domain of religion or spirituality. If spirituality is about things set apart and marked as special because of their anomalous nature, anything that is normalized can only have a tenuous connection to the spirituals. And this next one goes to normalization of cannabis use reflected in surveys of usage patterns according to the 2019 World Drug Report. That's the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime. The proportion of daily or near daily cannabis users in the United States doubled during the years 2002 to 2017, while lifetime prevalence rates during the same period saw only a modest increases. The World Drug Report did not offer any estimates for cannabis usage patterns in other parts of the world. In Colorado, the report estimated that 27% of adult age 21. Okay, so this is just some insight into what I'm talking about here, and that there's two different groups of cannabis users, right? Those who use it in the spiritual context, which is what it was originally used as, right, and for. And as time progressed, and especially in the last decades or so, it became just a drug that people do just because they've got nothing else to do, apparently. Sometimes you do it just as a recreation, just to have fun. There's no really any serious intent of introspection, of really direction where this can actually have a positive outcome. But the more we just do it without having such a resolution, then uh, we tend to run into issues. So very interesting article. You can go and look through it. Post a link, but it's very interesting. Well, I'm going to end this video right here for right now. There's more that I want to add to this to say, but I won't in this video because I don't want to make it too long. So save that for next time. But it gets a little deep. I'm not going to go deep into it. Just going to give a little basic kind of ground level stuff so that we can all understand it and hopefully use that to either strengthen our own understanding and help us move forward. And hopefully that's maybe something you have gotten a little bit more understanding about marijuana, about the history, and about what it's has been used for at least. Just a little bit more understanding. And until next time, keep healthy, keep your energy up, and tap into that right frequency. Look where you want to go, not where you're coming from, not where you don't want to go. Keep hope alive, keep the faith alive, and keep moving in those good, positive direction. So, again, see you next time. Be good.